Welcome back to the program. So now that we are fully on Substack, I just want to make sure that people understand that you can use any Substack link of any show that I do. Now, if someone is not a paid subscriber, they will then be prompted to, of course, they'll see a preview, which is really cool, one or two previews actually, and then it'll say to see the full video, just, upgrade to being a paid subscriber. So keep that in mind that you can put them on any social media platform and they're good to go. No one's going to take anything down or anything like that. Substack doesn't censor. The other thing is that I also put out free content, articles and things like that. So you can share all of those with people as well. And again, those people can also try to upgrade to paid memberships as well. But what I wanted to talk about, what I didn't get a chance to talk about yesterday because of all the hoopla of President Trump's rally and his 100 days and all that good stuff, was that we lost somebody yesterday, a great patriot, an incredible human being, David Horowitz from the Horowitz Freedom Foundation. He was, I believe, 86 years old, and he was battling cancer. This is somebody that was on the far left. He was background in education, of course, teaching and things like that. And he was a far left radical. He was raised by two communist parents, basically, that were, in bed with the communist parties and, supporting Russia and that kind of thing. And so he was raised as a radical leftist, and he was that way for not all of his life, but a certain amount of his life. And then eventually, through different events that happened to him, he started to wake up. He started to realize how evil the left was. And he did like what most people do when they were first on the left and now, conservative. They become activists. And he became a great activist. He wrote many, many best-selling books. And he was just a phenomenal patriot. So my thoughts and prayers go out to him, of course, and his loved ones and his family. May he rest in peace. Now, today, you may not have heard yet. You probably have. President Trump finally got his rare earth minerals deal and signed an agreement with Ukraine. Now, this is a really important agreement for a lot of reasons because Ukraine is one of the top 10 biggest rare earth depositors, whatever you want to call it, in the world. And the fact that China is number one on the list, and not only number one on the list, but even worse, they account for about 70% of extraction and distribution and being able to mine and get the rare earth out of the ground and use it. And so this was a big deal for a lot of reasons, and hopefully it's going to piggy bank onto Greenland, okay? But what I understand from this deal is a couple things. Number one, President Trump and the Trump administration in their negotiations, I guess, gave up on getting all of the billions of dollars back that we spent in Ukraine. However, all future, minerals and everything else is split, and we actually take a larger percentage of. And this deal creates a United States-Ukraine financial fund that is in Washington, D.C., that will be run by the Trump administration. So they didn't get everything they wanted, but of course they're going to be able to have access financially to these rare earth minerals and things like that in Ukraine. The reason this is so important is, as I stated previously, China is number one in the world, not just in the amount, but in the ability to extract. And so by getting this agreement with the Ukrainians, if we can then get an agreement with Greenland, we can start to squeeze the Chinese power structure and influence in these very, very vital and important rare earth minerals. A lot of these things, graphite and, lithium, things for batteries and cell phones. Right now, that's China. That is China, like almost exclusively being able to, extract this stuff from the earth. But doing a little more research, the top 10 countries are China, Vietnam is number 2, Brazil's number 3, Russia's number 4, India is number 5. Australia is number 6. We are number 7. Greenland is 8. Miramar is 9. And Thailand is number 10. Now, it looks like 11 is Ukraine. Okay? So if you break it down, we get Ukraine, we get Greenland, and we are basically, I wouldn't call us allies, but I would say that we have normalized relations with Vietnam. Vietnam is number 2, okay? And any trade deal moving forward with any of these countries must include the ability to gain access to their rare earth minerals. If we're able to do that consistently, we could then squeeze that market away from China. And if we can do that in the next, 3.5 years, whatever it is, we're going to be in a great position financially to not only not have to depend on China, but to weaken them to a point where we'll bring them down quite a few notches when it comes to, quote unquote, being a superpower. Because there can only be one superpower, and that's us. And that's the way it needs to be. So, you look at these different agreements, they all have to start and end with a negotiation for minerals and rare earth minerals. So we'll see what happens. All right, this is sad. This is so sad. You remember Peanut the squirrel and Fred the raccoon, right? Sometime in October, basically, they had that situation where this guy and his wife, I think his name was Tony Mongo, he had an animal sanctuary and he had a pet. And he had a pet squirrel, and the squirrel was named Peanut. Well, some Karen kept complaining or, doing some kind of thing where they were, complaining and writing complaints and sending them into New York. So eventually they went in and they took and confiscated his squirrel and his raccoon and killed them. That's not the full story. Judicial Watch has come out and they ordered a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit. And the information that they got, Peanut the squirrel and Fred the raccoon were going to be dead no matter what. Why? Because what happened to them was premeditated murder. New York authorities plan to euthanize Peanut the squirrel and Fred the raccoon before seizing them from the owner, according to their own information. Judicial Watch announced that it received 163 pages of records from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation in a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit. And it showed that authorities had planned to euthanize Fred the raccoon and Peanut the squirrel before they even arrived at the residency. And of course, they were seized from Pine City, New York resident Mark Longo. The incident report from the raid on Longo's home showed that 12 law enforcement personnel were involved in the October 30th, 2024 operation to seize Peanut and Fred. You can say in a lot of ways, if anybody was fence sitting in that last election, they got off the fence pretty quick, because this happened only 6 days or 5 or 6 days, 7 days before the election. This was able to percolate through the news cycle. It was all over social media. People are buying t-shirts, people are buying hats, Justice for Peanut. I'm telling you, it peeled away probably a few million votes. Thank God. So maybe this was an October surprise in some respect. The records also show that Peanut was decapitated for, quote, a rabies analysis after a wildlife biologist who seized the animals from Longo claimed to have been bitten on the thumb. The records were produced as part of 2 Freedom of Information Act request lawsuits filed on November 6th, 2024, the day after the election. Initially, the Department of Environmental Conservation refused to comply, but a Judicial Watch second lawsuit filed the month after seemed to expedite the release of these records. Then it goes on to say, in the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation's incident report, dated October 24, 2024, related to the raid on Longo's home in which Peanut and Fred were seized, the officers redacted the names of the complainant as well as 3 others associated persons. The form indicates that 2 items of, quote, wildlife property were seized to be held, including a, quote, live raccoon and a live gray squirrel. It notes that both animals were seized and transferred to redacted on October 30th, 2024. They also note that a firearm, model CT-42A, which is a semi-automatic 9mm AR-15 style rifle, produced by Delta Level Defense, was seized and sent to a lab on October 30th, 2024. The form lists the value of the animals and firearm as 0. Oh, imagine that. So Peanut the squirrel and Fred the raccoon were worth absolutely 0 in any monetary value. That is so sick. In the narrative portion of the form, officers indicate R8 Dispatch and R8 Wildlife Email have received multiple complaints of unlawfully possessed raccoons and unlawfully possessed squirrels that were posted to several social media outlets. The incident reported indicated that there were, quote, 0 victims, but 2 suspects in the case. Further along in the incident report, the officer details preparations for the squirrel raid. Unreal. 10/22/24, I was forwarded an email on my approved day off from Redacted regarding assisting with a possible search warrant to collect the unlawfully possessed raccoons and squirrels. We made arrangements to discuss the matter further on 10/23. On 10/23, we met with Redacted and discussed the basics of the case and made a plan for Redacted and I to meet on 10/24 to begin working on the case file. 10/24, we met with Redacted again and began researching the social media accounts of suspect Mark Longo. I also advised Redacted of the case to relay any new complaints to me, Redacted, and I. We spoke to, and again, Redacted. So let's see. On 10:30 at approximately 10:35, 1400 hours, I assisted with an execution of a search warrant at 37 Beckwith Road. And then it goes on to say, we took 20 photographs, were taken, and they created another portion of another report. I assisted with the execution of the search warrant. And then it says, in another portion of the report, an officer discusses at great length how he had multiple complaints about allegations of unlawful possession of squirrels and raccoons. Further along in the narrative, the officer writes that before the raid, I provided Redacted with a summary of the case and requested their suggestion on what we should do and have done with any wildlife located at the location during this investigation. Redacted advised that if any of the wild animals had contact with any humans, that they would most likely need to be tested for rabies, Redacted, advising that they utilize the Elmira Animal Control for euthanasia and submission of rabies testing and suggest we contact them. So in other words, this was not a situation in which they were going to go there and say, hey, we hear there's some animals here. Can we see what's going on? And then take the animals and then either let them go or euthanize them or whatever. No, this was made already previously. They were going to kill the animals no matter what. So this is really, really sick. It's premeditated murder. And I hope that the Trump administration and the Department of Justice gets involved because all lives matter. And yes, including squirrels and Fred the raccoon and all the rest of them. This was an evil, sadistic operation that never, ever should have happened. And whoever were the people that called this in, not only do you have animal blood on your hands, you should be prosecuted too. Unreal. Okay, let's talk about this. So we're hearing all over the place, you know, this judge blocks that judge blocks this one is blocking this one, that one's blocking that one, and everyone's saying, oh my God, Trump can't get anything done because of this, right? Well, the Trump administration understands what's happening. They get it. They understand. Bottom line is, You're deporting our illegal voters. What are you doing? Why are you taking these millions of people out? How are we going to cheat in the 2026 midterms and the 2028 elections if you're stealing and taking and deporting all the people that we need so we can steal these elections from you? That's what's happening here, folks. You think they care about, kill more Burritos Garcia? Of course not. If they found out he was dead tomorrow, they would obviously say that we should do a parade in his honor and the flag at half mast and go on television with fake crocodile teeth. No, they don't care. They're looking for an image. They're looking for one person. They're looking for their next George Floyd. They're looking for anything to grasp onto. Why? Because they have no power. None whatsoever. And the only power they have temporarily are in these judges. So President Trump understands that. So when asked by a reporter, this is what he said. And this is important because there are options here.
You mentioned this last night in your speech in Macomb, that we're facing an unprecedented situation where there's a lot of abuses of nationwide injunctions, sort of seemingly designed to curtail your power, specifically when it comes to deporting these illegal, violent aliens that came in under the previous administration. Yeah. Have you spoken to your team about ways to mitigate this and continue to deliver for the American people?
Well, there are ways to mitigate it, and there's some very strong ways. There's one way that's been used by 3 very highly respected presidents, but we hope we don't have to go that route. But there is one way that has been used very successfully by 3 presidents, all highly respected. And hopefully we don't have to go that way. But there are ways of mitigating that. I want to thank you all very much.
Okay, so what exactly is he talking about? Well, he's not talking about what I have been suggesting now for weeks, if not even more than a month, and that is to use the Alien Enemies Act, not the way that they're using it, but in a much more, shall we say, harder to stop way. And that would be by declaring war, by declaring an invasion into the country. What happens then is you bypass the courts and you bypass Congress. And then these judges, certainly not these lower court judges, there's nothing they can do. Now, I think that's the better way to go, to be quite honest. But what he's talking about here is the suspension of writ of habeas corpus rights. Now, it has been done by 3 presidents: Abraham Lincoln, Ulysses S. Grant, and FDR. Okay, so he would be the 4th if he does it. So what does it do exactly? Well, not much, to be honest. I mean, obviously it suspends all of their rights. They have no rights, they have no due process, they have no nothing, they can't lawyer, nothing, okay? But the Supreme Court could step in. And if they were to step in, they could say, if you're using it for a purpose other than what we think you are, then they can step in and stop it. The difference between the Aliens Enemies Act and actually declaring war, the courts can't stop that. All the Supreme Court could do is say, did you do it in your constitutional power? In other words, did you follow every single guideline? Did you dot every I and cross every T when you decided to do it? As long as you did that, the Supreme Court has to take a step back. There's nothing they can do. They can't stop it. Okay? So my way is more effective. His way, it can get challenged, number one. And number two, I think it's actually probably just as bad, if not worse. Because now he's suspending everything. So now the left can run ads in the midterms, against him, saying that he's Hitler and that, he took away everyone's rights, right? I mean, we know it's garbage, but that's, you got to think. This is how they operate. Right now, we have 1 million ads that we can run in the midterms of them running to El Salvador to protect gang members and gangbangers and child traffickers and rapists and murderers, right? We have the upper hand when it comes to powerful ads. Why would we then relinquish that, or at least even the playing field, by giving them one of these gifts, okay? If you do it the other way, not only do you win, but you can continue to get rid of these people, which is going to be in turn better for the entire country, all of our safety and, quite frankly, politically speaking, for him. So I don't know. This whole habeas corpus it's a pretty radical way to go. If the Supreme Court couldn't stop it, I'd say, yeah, go for it. Do it 100%. Go for it. But they can step in on that one, okay? It's going to be real hard for them to step in if he declares war. Remember that. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Put them down in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one.